Life can get hectic when you start a family, but which can help you make confident decisions from improving your home to financial planning. We'll make sure you're prepared. Whether you're looking to reduce your household bills, seeking advice around your child's health, or want to find our best buys for your new home, Which has got you covered. Use our expert advice to make the right choices for you and your growing family by visiting which.co.uk/growing family. That's where you'll find everything you need to make confident decisions and have peace of mind that all the advice you're getting is 100% independent. So to find out more, just head to which.co.uk/growing family.
Hello and welcome to the Which Money Shorts podcast. I'm Lucia Ariano, host of the Which Money podcast, here to bring you a taste of some of the best money advice taken straight from the Which Money magazine. In this week's episode, we're looking at the impact of the digital banking revolution and how it can and has facilitated economic abuse. This article was originally written by Faye Lipson. Simon was gentle, always smiling and kind to the point of naivety. His family recalled that as a beloved only child, he'd held hands with his parents in the street long past the age when other boys would have been embarrassed to do so. He'd never married nor had children himself, but was now a respected and dependable elderly gentleman with many friends, a pillar of the community and a church treasurer. When a woman connected with the church turned up on his doorstep, seeking sanctuary with a small child in tow, he instantly put his deep Christian faith into practice, welcoming them inside. In short order, the crisis arrangement became a permanent one. The elderly man's home was taken over with the belongings and toys of his guests. The woman who he came to think of as his carer began escorting him to cash points to withdraw large sums of cash for her use. As Simon succumbed to dementia, the cash point withdrawals became more frequent. He gave away an estimated £70,000 over the course of several years. He also changed his will to leave his £300,000 home to the partner of his carer. His generosity wasn't repaid with care or kindness. Adult social services eventually secured the eviction of Simon's abuser from his home. By this time, Simon was ill but had no money left to fund a place in a care home. When he died, there was no funeral, just a mention in the church he'd long served. Despite the strenuous efforts of his family, his property passed to his abuser's partner and was swiftly sold. Economic abuse, in which access to finances and essential goods is restricted, monitored and controlled, has likely existed for as long as humans have. But staggeringly, the phrase was only defined in law in 2021, with the passing of the Domestic Abuse Act. Perhaps that's why banks and financial services have only in recent years begun to grapple with the problem. That includes examining the ways in which the move to digital banking and the mass closure of branches has unwittingly assisted perpetrators of this type of abuse. While digital banking offers enormous convenience to millions of us every day, it's also led to the mass closure of physical bank branches. A total of 6,005 have been shuttered since January 2015. This can be hugely problematic for people in a variety of vulnerable situations, including victim survivors of economic abuse. We spoke to Refuge Surviving Economic Abuse, or SEA, and Hourglass, formerly known as Action on Elder Abuse. They all agreed that the loss of so many bank branches reduces the options open to victim survivors fleeing abuse and rebuilding their lives. However, SEA expressed optimism about the opportunities offered for vulnerable customers by banking hubs, of which there are now 132 across the UK. Fran Ferrier, an economic abuse coordinator at Refuge, told us that some victims have their phone monitored by their abuser and it isn't safe, so they prefer to go to a branch in person. Others have been denied owning a phone altogether. In some cases, victims can't open fresh accounts, which would help them to regain control because the abuser has stolen their passport or photo ID. Some banks will accept alternative documents, but only when presented in person. Fran notes that outside of London, public transport isn't as good. One person they worked with needed to make a 40-mile round trip to reach their nearest bank branch. This is very expensive and can be incredibly difficult to arrange if you don't have a bank account. This means that access to local in-person appointments is hugely important. In its new report, From Control to Financial Freedom, the banking industry body UK Finance envisages an important role for physical branches and branch staff in countering economic abuse. For example, it highlights a case in which a victim survivor fled to a bank branch in the clothes she was standing in, and her mobile phone had been smashed so she couldn't reach out to family. She wanted to go and stay with her mum, who lived quite a distance away but had no means of contacting her or getting there. We provided the branch phone so she could call her mum, who welcomed her to stay with her in a safe environment. The report also identifies that the banking protocol, a scheme where bank staff spot the signs of a customer being scammed and summon the police, could be adapted to support a victim-led response to financial and economic abuse. We asked UK Finance to comment on the continuing closure of branches in light of their crucial role in disrupting economic abuse. It told us the banking protocol operates by phone as well as in the branch. It added that as bank branches close, help can be sought in person at banking hubs. So how does digital banking facilitate coercive control? The Financial Conduct Authority's, FCA's, 2022 Financial Lives Survey found that in the previous 5 years, 4.1% of adults, equivalent to 2.2 million people, had experienced some form of financial abuse. Among these, 1.4% experienced being kept short of money, denied access to a bank account, or had finances and spending controlled by a partner or family member. Domestic abuse charities told us the massive shift towards digital banking made it easier for abusers to monitor and control a victim survivor's banking and payment activity. Abusers can check banking apps to see what and where the victim survivor is spending. They can also opt in to push notifications to alert them to spending and bank transfers in real time. In the most extreme and disturbing cases, victims can be placed in profound danger if their banking activity indicates they're about to flee their abuser. SEA Financial Services Manager Lauren Garrett highlighted the tragic case of Angela Mittal, who was murdered in 2018 by Lauren's Brand, the controlling husband she was preparing to divorce. She transferred £35,000 out of their joint account less than 2 hours before he killed her. Lauren from SEA explains, until recently, advances in technology have been done without thinking of the impact on victim survivors or without engaging with survivors to understand their lived experience before implementing changes. She added that abusers will go to great lengths to exploit banking systems. Another frightening example of this digital hazard is the ease with which abusers can obtain credit in the name of their victim, either fraudulently or by coercing their victim into applying. According to the Financial Lives Survey, this is something 1.1% of UK adults have experienced in the past 5 years from a partner or family member. The availability of frictionless online credit applications makes this form of abuse easier to perpetrate and out of sight of branch staff. One of the most perverse misuses of digital banking is through abusive payment references. This is where abusers send their victim payments with intimidating messages that appear on their bank statements. This can be perpetrated long after a victim survivor has fled an abuser and ended all other means of contact. Court orders in relation to child maintenance, for example, may mean the abuser has to continue regular payments to the victim for many years. When sending these payments, some abusers see the payment reference box as a means of continued communication and control. Banks may have filters to detect obvious offensive language, but they can't always detect slurs or menaces that are unique to the victim survivor's experience. In other cases, abusers may send strings of 1p payments and enter a single letter into each reference box, spelling out an abusive word or sentence. Until recently, banks claimed there was little they could do about this. However, in June 2023, Starling worked with SEA to develop a simple solution. Its customers can now swipe to hide references from an abusive sender. It was an example of what domestic abuse charities keep calling for. Refuge's Fran told us the charity was keen to work with financial services. It's so important to have people who can bring the voices of survivors of domestic abuse into the room when technologies and financial services are being developed. A year on, out of the 11 UK big banks and societies we spoke to, only Monzo confirmed it offers a similar function. SEA and Refuge both said they were seeing progress within the financial services industry. Refuge's Fran said she'd perceived significant shifts in attitudes in recent years, with the big high street banks taking positive steps. Both charities were clear that future innovations need to be safe by design, with victim survivors' voices and experiences factored in from the earliest stages. SEA's Lauren said it was seeing more commitment and innovation in response to economic abuse, particularly from firms signed up to the UK Finance's 2021 Financial Abuse Code, but that it isn't consistent. Recent improvements offered by banks include non-geographic sort codes, so abusers can't locate victim survivors, one-off payments to help those fleeing abuse, and quick exit buttons on banks' domestic abuse web pages so users can easily close them in a hurry. There is also an array of web forms and hotlines for disclosing abuse that connect victim survivors with specially trained bank staff. Innovations like these could make it easier for victim survivors to seek help. Attempts by banks to proactively identify and question victim survivors might risk a perpetrator being alerted. Yet cases where victim survivors have lost or diminishing mental capacity, as with Simon, are particularly difficult, as they may not be able to recognise, disclose or flee the abuse they are experiencing. Hourglass Deputy CEO and Policy Director Veronica Gray told us that in terms of economic abuse, older people are just not on the radar, and that cases involving dementia are seen as too difficult to deal with. She believes that bank staff need to show greater professional curiosity around the possibility that elderly customers are being abused. She also thinks that the government should fund specialist services for older victim survivors. Fiona Turner, Head of Vulnerability, Financial Inclusion and Capability at UK Finance, said, "The financial services industry has a lot of support in place for victims of economic abuse, but more needs to be done to remove existing barriers and make it simpler for victim survivors." She added, "This requires collective action across government and public and private sectors. At UK Finance, we're committed to playing our part and will continue to work to drive the changes needed to better help victim survivors." Thank you to Faye Lipson for that original article, first published in Which Money magazine's August edition. If you want to subscribe and get the magazine delivered directly to your door, click the link in the description of today's show. For even more expert money advice, subscribe to our free newsletter, and remember to tune into our weekly money podcast with new episodes every Friday. This episode was produced and edited by Romana Yassin. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.
As the summer comes to an end, you may not know how to prep your garden for the autumn and winter months ahead. Rest assured, because we have a team of experts at Which Gardening who can give you practical advice. Better still, you can join Which Gardening right now and receive 25% off the usual price for an annual subscription. By joining Which Gardening, you'll receive the magazine direct to your door. It's packed full of useful advice, plus our best buy recommendations. You'll also gain access to one-to-one gardening advice, so you can get your questions answered with clear advice tailored to your own particular needs. So to join Which Gardening and receive 25% off the usual price, just head to signup.which.co.uk/WLP-gardening. That's signup.which.co.uk/WLP-gardening to join Which Gardening for just £36.75 for a whole year. Be quick, this offer ends on the 11th of September.